Good afternoon, everyone. I want to commend you all on moving briskly from your working groups to the Prector Lab. We're very happy to have you all here, having lunch together, enjoying the fellowship of a community. We're also happy to have you here so that you can hear from our Provost, Martha Pollack. Martha is actually many things. She wears many hats. She is a professor in the School of Information and former dean of the School of Information. I just have to throw a few of these extra things in. She's also a professor of computer science. And as provost, she's the executive vice president for academic affairs. And that means that she runs not only the academic side of things, but the budget part of the academic side of things. And this is really important. It's pretty unique among universities to have a provost who actually does both pieces. That means that we have someone who's really thinking about our academic programs as she's thinking about the budget. And I want to say I've known her for quite a while, 6 years as associate dean, but in the few months that I've been in this role, she's been an incredible support to me and to the School of Education. So I know that you really want to hear her and not me, so I'm going to turn it over now to our provost, Martha Pollack.
This is on? Okay, well, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. There aren't many schools where they have the faculty, the staff, and the students all together for a meeting, so it's really nice to have this opportunity. And a special shout out to Elizabeth Moji to thank her for coming. While I'm doing thanks, there are a number of faculty in this school whose work really exemplifies the commitments we have as a university. Commitments to public mission, commitments to outreach, commitments, of course, to advancing education. And I want to thank a few of them. Where's Tabby? Is Tabby? I won't call them out in case they're not here. I won't make them raise their hand. But Tabby Chavez is now leading NCID, our National Center for Institutional Diversity. Sue Donarski has been the brain power behind our incredibly successful Hale Scholars Program. If you don't know about Hale Scholars, Hale was an experiment we did last year where we identified free and reduced lunch students in the community around the state who were likely to qualify for admission to the University of Michigan. We sent them a letter saying, you've been identified as a Hale Scholars. Hale is high-achieving, innovative leader, I believe. And if you are admitted, you will receive 4 years of free tuition, and you may receive additional financial aid based on your family needs. Now, here's the thing. A large majority of these students probably would have qualified for that aid anyway, but it was the calling out, making very clear that they would get this, and making very clear that we were saying to them, you may have an opportunity to come here. You should consider us. Because they were likely eligible for that aid anyway, we were able to have a control group where we just sent the normal financial aid material and so on. And we saw almost a tripling, I forget the exact numbers, but I think it's about 28% of the control group and well north of 60% of the Hale Scholars applied. And then they were admitted at equal rates. So this has been a really successful experiment in our efforts to increase the socioeconomic diversity of our class. And we're going to be expanding it. Sue, of course, would like us to hold it completely fixed so she can get nice, clean numbers for her study. We want to, but anyway. I want to thank Rob Jagers and Maisie Golson, who have been working on our very important Wolverine Pathways project. Again, a project I hope many of you know about. This is modeled a little bit after the Rutgers Future Scholars Program, but adapted to us. It's, again, an attempt to grow the pipeline by reaching out to 7th and 10th graders in the Southeast Michigan area, providing them with supplemental education, with information about what it means to go to college, and providing their parents with that same sort of information, again, with a Hale-like promise of free tuition at the end if you're admitted. We had, I think, 134 students last year in Ypsilanti and Southfield involved. There have been another 240 or so invited in this year. We're also beginning to pilot in Detroit with a hope to reach out further to Detroit next year. And Rob and Maisie from your school have been lead on that. I always say Don's last name wrong. Help me. Purak, thank you. Don Purak has been very heavily involved in our academic innovation program, and I'll get back to that. There are many more of you. If I haven't called you out, that doesn't mean I've forgotten about you. It's just there's lots of you in the School of Education that are involved in campus-wide programs. The faculty, though not the students, got my start of year message a couple of days ago, in which I sort of reviewed what the big initiatives going on are. Because the students didn't get it, and I know there's a lot of students, let me just really quickly talk about that. I want to get through this quickly because mostly I just want to answer whatever questions you might have. But let me tell you about what the big things going on campus are. I know that everyone in this school knows about the DE&I, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion strategic planning process. It's been a major effort across campus over the past year. It is a major commitment on this campus. And you know, as I always say to people, we don't always get it right. We don't. We get it wrong sometimes. We get it wrong often. But the commitment has never been lacking, back to the Supreme Court and before. Sometimes we're a little more complacent. This whole planning effort has been an attempt to move beyond complacency, double down on our commitment to making this a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive place. I understand that you guys have added justice, and you now say DHEA. I love that. I wish we had thought about that when we were doing it. But we already had DEI, and we made the other DE&I, the Digital Education and Innovation Lab, change their name to AI, which makes me crazy because I'm an artificial intelligence researcher. That's what AI. Anyway, so I don't think we're going to DHEA, but I'm glad you guys are. You guys have been a real leader in this. You were a model of how to develop a plan. You had a lot of, really an extraordinary amount of engagement across campus. I think your EDAC committee that I know well is a real force. The plan, the campus-wide plan, will be rolling out on October 6th. So the President's Leadership Breakfast is October 5th. The plan overall will be announced on October 6th. And then the real work begins. Now, it's not as if the work hasn't begun. Programs like Wolverine Pathways, programs like the training program that CRLT has been doing for new faculty and GSIs to enable them to teach more effectively in multicultural classrooms. We haven't waited for the strategic plan, but I think the strategic plan is meant to be a sort of a planting a flag in the ground and saying this is the Michigan that has always been committed to diversity and to equity and inclusion, and we're going to continue to work very, very hard on that. And I encourage everyone to be involved in some way. Large-scale research programs, you know, this university's strength, you hear the president say this all the time, is our breadth of excellence. When I recruit faculty, when I recruit deans, what I tell them is it really doesn't matter where your research interests take you, we have an expert on that. But if you're going to capitalize on that, you have to bring people together. You have to get them talking across boundaries. And when you couple that with our public mission, which is one where we try to address major social problems, poverty, sustainability, K-12 education, it's really helpful to have some sort of coherent structure to tackle these things. So there are a bunch of these that have rolled out over the past few years. One is interprofessional health education. In modern healthcare settings, doctors don't work independently of nurses, independently of pharmacists, independently of dentists. So dentists, for example, who are out amongst the homeless community, they're often the ones who will take the blood pressure and do sort of first-line medical screening. So what we have is a really effective program. It's getting going, but I'll tell you, it's like the envy of my provost peers at other universities. We're so much ahead of them. That brings together our students from all of our health sciences schools to learn about how decision-making goes on in different disciplines, to learn about how to be more effective in communication. And now there's starting to be a research component that's saying, okay, how can we be more effective in delivering healthcare if we have these multidisciplinary teams? Many of you have probably heard of MIDAS, the Michigan Data Science Initiative. Big investment. This is an absolutely critical area of research these days. And I think what we did that was really smart is we not only have a foundational layer, how do you sort of, what I would talk about, you know, develop the algorithms and the analyses for doing big data, but also we've tied it to 4 key thrusts that are areas in which we as a university naturally have strength. So one is transportation. You all have probably, if you haven't, you know, you all probably have heard of M-City and the automated driving. We have real strength there. One is learning analytics. and this is obviously of direct relevance to the ed school, mining the data that we get about all our students. I mean, right now, if you go to the grocery store, they've mined all the data to figure out what products to put what next to other products so that you buy as much as you can. I like to think of this as telling us what classes should sit next to what other classes for a particular student so that they can get the most out of their education. There's a big social science thrust, and there's a personalized medicine thrust. We've got a humanities collaboratory, which is bringing together humanists from across LS&A and then reaching into other schools and colleges to think about new ways to collaborate. Humanists are typically, in their carrel on their own, but they want to collaborate with each other and with the community. We're working very hard on revisioning our academic sustainability programs. We have a lot of strength in academics in sustainability. When I say academic sustainability, so I'm distinguishing that from operational sustainability, building green buildings. I'm talking about research and education. We have a lot of strength, but it's been sort of divided and not everybody's been rowing in the same direction. So we're re-envisioning that. One other that you should watch for that I am super excited about, and several School of Education faculty were on the planning committee for this, is a new initiative on poverty. We now have a name for it. Did you know we have a name, Elizabeth? It's going to be called the Michigan Poverty Solutions. Michigan Poverty Solutions. And it's going to focus on evidence-based analyses of interventions in intergenerational poverty. So it's, we have lots of people who theorize about the causes of poverty. That's fine, that work will go on. But this is going to be specifically about testing interventions in the educational field, in the job field, and in the health field to intergenerational poverty, both urban and rural. And so I really hope there'll be, obviously education is key to that. Okay, diversity, equity, and inclusion, large-scale interdisciplinary research, innovations in teaching. Huge and obviously hugely relevant to all of you. I'm so excited that you guys decided to participate in the edX MicroMasters program. We have got to innovate. We have, it's what is it, sharks? If they have to swim or die, right? We have got to innovate, and I think who better to innovate with a new delivery form of education than an education school? So I'm really excited about that. I hope to see you involved throughout what we're calling the Academic Innovation Initiative, which is meant to be a whole year of bringing people together across campus to talk about the future of education, higher education. What happens in the classroom, what happens outside of the classroom on campus, and what happens around the world. The school that is, always providing critical connections to other units on campus. I think in particular of CEDAR. So CEDAR, those of you, I think everybody knows what CEDAR is, helps other units design new curricula, helps them put in research grants that often have to have an educational component, and helps them assess those new curricula or those new programs once they've been stood up. An enormously important way for this school to serve not only itself, but the rest of campus, and then frankly, reaching out into the world. And of course, as has been true for more than a decade, you're contributing in a really important way to the national agenda on education through your standards programs, your teacher education program, and so on. So that's kind of the 10,000-foot view of what's going on in Ann Arbor, how I at least see the School of Ed fitting in, and I'm happy to take questions or comments from any of you. And I know, because I've been to School of Ed meetings before, that you guys are not shy. If I stand here long enough, someone will raise their hand. Otherwise, I'm going to call on someone, right?
And we taught you about wait time. So you just wait. Someone will ask the question.
Martha Ellen Byerline, what is the source of the money that's coming into the schools to help support the DHEA agenda as well as the diversity agendas across the
Yeah, so this past year when we went to the Board of Regents, the president said, okay, my first budget, I was brand new. Now I've been here, I want in this budget to have resources for my key pillars, the president's key pillars. And those include diversity, large-scale research that breaks down boundaries, more in the biosciences, connections to the health system, academic innovation. I think that's probably it. And so we actually had a slightly higher than normal tuition increase to bring in additional revenue for those sources. Now, I think this is really important while we're talking about tuition. We are deeply concerned about costs, and we're working really hard on cost. But you guys can help me get out a really important message. So you would think if you read the newspaper that the University of Michigan was doing nothing about costs for undergraduate students. In fact, what we have been doing is investing extraordinarily heavily in financial aid, even in a period in which the state appropriations, our state appropriations today are about the same as they were in like 1998. I think that's the number. I'll get you the exact number. Even though we're educating, 5,000, 6,000 more students. We've put enough in financial aid that for students with need, not for students who can afford full fare, but for students with need, the cost of attendance is lower today, even in nominal dollars, than it was 7 years ago. It's lower today. And if you include inflation, that means it even costs less than that. And the average loan burden for undergraduates graduating from the University of Michigan, and that's sort of all in. I mean, sometimes wealthier students will borrow money too just because it's a good financial deal. The average loan burden for in-state students over the past 3 years, the 3 years ending last year, we don't have last year's data yet, but it'll go further, down by $2,000 for in-state students, down by $5,000 for out-of-state students. That doesn't mean it's not expensive. That doesn't mean that I don't understand. I mean, I really do understand how hard it is to be a student and that it is expensive. But I just want to be clear. We are investing as much as we possibly can, while at the same time trying to maintain the excellence of this university. Because if you don't do that, let me throw out one more number while I'm throwing out numbers. And I know I'm talking about undergraduate numbers. Maybe I shouldn't throw out this number. Well, I'll throw it out. But I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I'm hesitating. So the 20-year return on investment for an undergraduate in-state who graduates from the University of Michigan is $667,000, 20-year. So that means on average, even after you account for the cost of going to college and the loan payback, you get more later than earlier, but on average you're making $30,000 more a year, and it's like $550 for out-of-state. The reason I hesitate is it is not, unfortunately, as high for teachers. Let me just be blunt about that. Teachers don't earn what. That doesn't mean what you're doing is not important. It's incredibly important, but I just want to be clear about that. Oh, I know you have questions. I could even guess what they are, but I won't. Yes, and can you tell me who you are?
Yeah, I'm Corey Keller. I'm in the LMAC program here. We were just talking, just to go on the point you last said about how teachers obviously would make less than the people getting the $30,000 of more returns. Has it ever been talked about or considered, just like generally in education, that the cost of what you go to school for is correlated to what the average staff from the school will make?
Yeah, it's not quite that. I mean, it is true that the what you pay now is related to what the cost of what it is to educate you. So engineers pay more because of labs and stuff. Students in the raw school pay even more because the cost of faculty. Now that's not the same thing, though it correlates pretty well. One thing that can help a little is the government's repayment program, right, where that's sort of tied to your salary. I think it does get talked about. All these ideas get talked about, and it's just sort of how to balance them all. But it's exactly, I think it's exactly the right question to be asking. Such a polite audience. If you don't ask me questions, I'm going to start telling jokes. Come on, Elizabeth. I have such good jokes. Yeah.
She's actually very funny. You talked a lot about the different initiatives on campus.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the biggest role we can play? What can we do as a school to really help either move those initiatives forward or to help move the campus forward? Is it our DHA work? Is it the work with the Poverty Center? Is it the work with academic innovation, learning analytics? Or are there other things that you would like to see us doing and doing differently from the way we've been doing?
Well, let me not give one, let me give three answers. Two of them you've said. First of all, the diversity agenda is on the top of the campus's agenda. This is a school. I mean, all the schools are committed, but let's be honest, some schools are further along in their understanding of the problem and what they've done to address the problem. This school, I think, is at the front of the pack with one or two others. So I think continuing to play a lead, continuing basically to be a role model. I mean, when the other units were doing their diversity strategic plans, they looked to the School of Ed plan as a model. I think that can be enormously, I hate this word, but impactful for our campus. I also think, I mean, you know, you guys are the experts on education. You guys are the ones who study how it is people learn and how we can be effective in teaching. And I know there's a trend not to talk about teaching, but just about learning, but I can't help, you know, we don't bring students in and just say, okay, go learn. We teach them. So I think to the extent you can be involved in academic innovation, involved in helping us think about engaged learning and about the use of technology, you're the ones to do it. But the third is really, and it's actually interesting, it's kind of up a level of those other two. What I love about being in a university, and Michigan in particular, is you meet all these people who just think, I mean, it's like diversity of thought. They think in different ways. I remember years ago when I was the vice provost and Phil Hanlon was the provost. He was a mathematician. And I was sitting at the APG is what we call the meeting of the deans. And the then dean of the law school and one of the vice provosts, who was a lawyer, were sitting and they were parsing something in one of our standard policy guides. Afterwards, I said to the vice provost, I said, I have just never seen people pull apart a sentence to that level of detail. And she looked at me and she said, well, now you know how I feel when you and Phil start writing down all those equations about everything. You know? And I was telling the story, and the art dean said, no, you got to draw pictures. I think what's great about being a university is that partly it's individuals, but partly it's your training. We all think in different ways. And I always encourage everyone, get into these conversations and bring the perspective of an educator, because that's a unique perspective. Yes?
So Mary Plum, and two different things, but I'm also a field instructor for our second year intern. So one of the things that comes up every year, and I've heard this a lot this year, is during their second semester, their fourth semester in the program, there are students teaching full-time, which means they really can't work, or, well, some of them do, and that's sort of the problem, is that there doesn't, at least I'm not aware of, is there a pot of money somewhere that can support those interns during their student teaching so that they really can put all their energies into student teaching and aren't trying to work evening hours or jobs over the weekend or to have money to buy their groceries?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I mean, there isn't a sort of obvious pot of money. That's the first answer. And there are there's a whole bunch of federal rules in how we give out financial aid. So, I mean, I would recommend you take that up with Elizabeth, and we can talk with the financial aid people. But I don't have a good answer for you on that. But I can say there isn't just a sort of pot of money sitting around, I'm afraid. Yes?
So going back to the diversity, equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, how you said, I think there's about 50 plans, correct?
49 plus the campus plan.
Okay, plus the campus. Those are all being unveiled on those 6. So that's a deadline for all these 49 entities, departments.
The units, okay, so let's be real clear about this. The units have been building these plans. The plans are in a sense, I mean, the deadline is sort of over, but none of these are all, and I mean this, these are all going to change. These are living documents. These are going to change, like on October 7th, there'll already start to be changes.
So my question is around more of like the accountability. You said we have a lot of different plans. Of course, you said school ed and other different departments are kind of at the forefront of this, but what about those who are maybe
Yeah.
at the other end, and like what is accountability?
So that's a really good question. So there are two forms of accountability that I think of. One are metrics. The plan includes a set of metrics, and the metrics are meant to address both diversity numbers. Now we can't have quotas, that's illegal, but are we seeing progress? And they're meant to address, and this is harder to get at, climate issues, and you get at that through surveys and you get at that through programs, and you get at that through assessments of programs. So we will be putting up on the web, I'm not sure where exactly, but a set of metrics that will be tracked over time. There's also the soft accountability. So the president is accountable to the Board of Regents for showing progress here. I'm accountable to the president. My deans are accountable to me, and the faculty are going to be accountable to the deans. The students, it's a little bit harder to formally make accountable, but I think this is a community issue. I think absolutely everybody has to be accountable. Does that help? You look not convinced. But do you have ideas?
That'd be a better idea, because like some of what I've been doing for the last few weeks is really trying to find and like read some of these different.
They'll all be out. In 3 weeks, they will all be public. It's just rather than have them sort of come out in dribs and drabs and then people say, oh, you're only doing a little here. The president, I think he's right about this, wants to get them all out at the same time. They will all be available for everyone to read. Yeah?
Hi, I'm Vicki Bigelow. I'm the evaluation coordinator for Cedar. And I was wondering if there are ways of talking about new initiatives like the Poverty Solutions Initiative, and I'm wondering about like if there is a table established where people can come together, like ways to create synergy between a group like Cedar and this Poverty Solutions group, so we could maybe understand how we might serve their needs. Or
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I mean, I'm not sure I have a quick off the top of my head answer. We have 6,000 faculty and 43,000 students and 40,000 staff, and there's always this question about, I will say this isn't just Michigan. I used to work at other universities. There's always this phenomenon of faculty, you go to a conference and then you see someone else from your campus and you say, oh, I didn't know you were working on that. If people have good ideas about how to have more bringing of people together, I'm all ears. Mostly the way it tends to work around here is word of mouth or through the record or. Ed?
Martha, I know that you, one of the things that the university has done really well, I think, is forward planning and anticipating challenges before they arrive.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why we're in such good shape relative to a lot of our peer institutions. So I know you're engaged in that. You talked a lot in your remarks about what's happening right now. But I'm curious about, as you think about budgetary pressures and issues and forecasting, as you put on your Nostradamus cap and engage in thinking about where we're going to be 5 to 10 years from now, how do you see things changing, not changing? What do you see?
That is the $64,000 question, or as the case may be, the $3 billion question, which is our budget. In higher ed in general, the pressures are all downward. So particularly in public education, states are declining. I mentioned this already. We have half in a per student basis in inflation-adjusted dollars what we had a decade ago. There's downward pressure on tuition. A decade ago, we were raising tuition to make up for that. Now we really can't. Now I do want to say, people always say to me, when are you ever going to stop raising tuition? And that's the wrong question. In a healthy economy, there's inflation, our costs go up too. The question is why, you can't keep having inflation grow faster than, tuition grow faster than inflation. At the federal level, federal funding is flat. And for us, now we're in a state where the number of state graduates has been plummeting, just plummet. So we have been able to slightly increase our out-of-state, the percentage of our students from out of state without hurting the likelihood that you'd get it from in-state. But we're getting close to 50-50 and we're not going to go over that. The bright light is philanthropy. We have wonderful donors to this university. There's two things you can do. You can cut costs, you can grow revenue. I think we have to do both of them. You can't cut your way to greatness. You can't just cut. We are going to have to do some things differently. There's some things that we as faculty have enjoyed for 40 years, and we're going to just have to do them a little bit differently. But I really think the thing that can save us is if we think of, protect our identity, protect our reputation, but think of new things that we can do. It's one of, I'm mostly excited about the MicroMasters for the intellectual and educational potential, but if it starts drawing extra revenue to this school, or it starts bringing in different master students because they can come more quickly, that's a great thing. I think we're all going to have to think of summer. It's possible, maybe we can do things on the campus in the summer that we haven't done before. Maybe we can have new kinds of education where we go out and work with companies and educate them. I mean, I don't know what the answers are, but you know, those are your levers. You cut costs, you grow revenue. And on that kind of depressing note, yes.
I was given strict instructions that our provost had to leave at noon to be somewhere else, probably to give greetings. And I wanted to make sure that before she left, we gave her a special little thank you gift. Now, this gift has a nice gift, and then this one that I just love. It's a rain poncho for football games, and I would like you to wear it tomorrow. Even if it's not raining.
Tomorrow, the president is not able to make the football game, so I'm standing in for the president. I said to the president, what do I say at the tailgate? He said, oh, just tell him a football joke. No, any football jokes. Well, maybe this will be funny enough.
If you wear this, you can help us recruit. You can be funny. And you can be very stylish. So, and then this is just a little nicer. You could wear this as well at the party. So thank you for coming. Thank you. And I have just two other announcements. So one, we've been talking a lot about DHEA and the fact that we're leaders in this work on campus. And there's a person perched up in the balcony up there. See her little head poking over the top? And that is our former Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, you know, the one that got divided into that guy and that lady. Yeah, it took two people to replace Carla O'Connor, and I just want to thank you for your leadership in the DHEA work, even though it wasn't called DHEA, but yes, thank you. And of course, our former beloved Dean, Deborah Lowenberg-Gall, was also critical to that work. I noticed that she blew off the all-school meeting. I don't know what that's about. No, she is on leave this semester, so that's why you don't see her here. But when you see her in the hallway, say thank you for all the great work that she's done for us and for giving us a foundation that will allow us to build into the future. The last thing I'll say is that here's a little Innovation in Action Learning Levers flyer. They're on the back of the table back there, the library table, and if you didn't get to go to the session, please grab one because I think you might be really interested in the work. And now enjoy. If you didn't get a cupcake, watch the ones with the blue frosting. It's kind of bad for your lips. And have a great rest of the day, rest of the weekend, and rest of the semester and year. Enjoy.